I already know this video is going to get a lot of weebs angry, so I'm just going to start off with this. I don't think Genshin Impact is a bad game. What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Javon Sway, aka Sway Kage, over at twitch.tv. If you guys don't know me, I'm somewhat of a Genshin streamer, but now I'm kind of turning towards a new game, as you guys can see from the title. And in today's video, I'm going to be explaining why I'm making the switch from giving MiHoYo all my time and money to giving Square Enix all my time and money with Final Fantasy XIV. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I was talking about how I feel like Genshin Impact is a good game. And I feel like it really is a good game if we're thinking about like mobile pocket games that we can bring on the go with us anywhere we want. Like, I think in that respect, Genshin Impact is an amazing game. You know, it's one of those games where you just log on, play for like an hour a day, log out. For me, I'm looking for like a game that I can like really sink a lot of time into, and Genshin Impact, the way it's designed, doesn't seem like that game for me. Final Fantasy, just on like in terms of how much content there is, it's just like incomparable. Like, it has way more hours of content. So if we just take a look at like the dailies that you have to do in Genshin, you only have like a couple things to do, and those things are you have to complete your daily commissions, use up your resin, and complete the battle pass daily. And completing the battle pass daily is basically just doing the commissions, using up your resin, and then I think you have to mine 10 items, and then I think that's it. That's all you have to do really in a day. We're gonna ignore weekly stuff for now. We're just gonna focus on daily content, but that's pretty much all you really have to do in the day, assuming that you're fully caught up with the Spiral Abyss and you've caught up with all your side quests. The daily commissions alone will probably take you like, I don't know, at maximum I'd probably say 15 minutes. But I've even gotten my dailies done in like a pinch of like 3 to 5 minutes, I think, right before the daily reset on Genshin Impact. So, and then using up the resin, like I think using up the resin and then completing the commissions and mining the 10 items will probably take you half an hour to like an hour at tops, and like the hour is like really pushing it. Now when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV, on the other hand, there's so much daily content that it's very likely that you won't even have time to get to do everything in one day. Hold on. I'm actually gonna bring up the list of all the dailies that you have to do in Final Fantasy XIV, because there's a lot of them. I can't even remember, that's how many there are. But to start off, you've got 1 to 8 daily roulettes to do, which are basically like the random dungeons and boss runs in the game. You can think of these as like the domain equivalent of Final Fantasy XIV, but you've got those. You've got daily crafting and gathering challenges. You got Beast Tribe quests. You got daily world bosses. I said daily, not weekly. World bosses, clan hunts, treasure hunts, retainer adventures, the mini cactpot lottery at the Gold Saucer. And there's even more than that. These are just like the dailies. These are still just dailies. I'm not even mentioning the weeklies because I'm just trying to give like a fair comparison from Final Fantasy XIV to Genshin, just in terms of the dailies and stuff. But like, there is so much to do, as you guys can see. And let's just say for fun, we wanted to include the weeklies. Like, the weeklies get crazy. Like, you're definitely adding on like an extra 5 to 10 hours of gameplay just by adding in the weeklies into that. It might be even more than that, honestly. And to not even think about dailies and weeklies, there's a lot of outside content in the form of like side quests and leveling up different jobs and stuff like that on your one character. And guys, like, I think the expansion for Final Fantasy XIV, the new expansion comes out in, I think, November. I don't even know if I'm gonna get all of my jobs to level 80 by the time that the new expansion comes out. And the new expansion comes out in 6 months. So that means, as of right now, I have over 6 months of content that I have to get through. And when it comes to Genshin, I do my dailies, I do my resin, and I'm like, what do I do now? I have no clue what to do now, and then I log off. I think that's a really good problem to have. I think it's a great problem to have in a game where you're like, damn, there's so much stuff to do, I don't even know what to do next. Like, I'd much rather have like that happen to me than be like, oh damn, what do I do next? There's like nothing to do in this game, you know what I mean? So while we're on the topic of content and endgame, I just want to talk about how the different games do endgame differently and what I like about Final Fantasy more than Genshin Impact. The thing I really like about Final Fantasy XIV is I feel like they really do difficulty right in the game. So what do I mean by that? So when a fight is supposed to be like at a higher level per se than like the normal level fights. For example, we can call this like normal raids in Final Fantasy, or like normal trials versus like extreme trials or like savage raids. And then in Genshin Impact we can call it like floor 9, floor 12, right? The thing I like about Final Fantasy is that instead of just increasing the HP pools of these enemies and adding in more enemies at like the same time and stuff like that, I feel like Final Fantasy XIV tackles difficulty differently in the sense that they add more complex mechanics to fights. And I feel like that type of difficulty is way more engaging than just like higher health pools and more enemies and stuff like that, because I feel like it's just more interesting to play through, and I feel like it feels less cheesy. You know, I do like the Spiral Abyss in Genshin Impact, and I'm like, all this difficulty feels so cheesy, and it kind of just feels like a tank and spank kind of heal through anything kind of thing, right? It's like, okay, well, okay, you know, some of these mechanics and stuff in like Genshin Impact are like next to impossible to like dodge and stuff like that. So it's like pretty much you get to the point where you're just like healing through stuff and you're spanking through stuff. That's it. Don't get me wrong, it's not because I don't like hard games that I don't like Genshin Impact Floor 12. I mean, one of my favorite game series ever is the game series made by From Software. So Dark Souls 1 to 3, Sekiro, Bloodborne. I'd say Demon's Souls 2, but I've never played it, but it looks like an awesome game. Those are all very hard games to most people, and it's like, you know, I have a great time playing all those games, but Genshin Impact Floor 12, I'm just like, I'm kissing my teeth. I'm like, there's so many cheese mechanics in the fights and stuff like that. The defending the towers and stuff, like the monoliths, it's like, it's basically like a crowd control character check, and I feel like that's the point where I start having a little bit less fun. And yeah, like you don't really see that much in Final Fantasy XIV. Like Final Fantasy XIV, there will be like DPS checks, and it's like if you don't meet the DPS check, like the party wipes or whatever. I don't really have a problem with that. I think that's pretty cool. But just like the tanking, spanking, and like Genshin Impact, like that's not really my idea of like a good fight in a game. While we're on the topic of raids and trials, this brings me to the co-op system in Final Fantasy XIV, and it's freaking amazing, dude. In Genshin Impact, I feel like they really struggled with the co-op system. You know, it was pretty fun at the beginning of the game where you were like exploring with friends and other people and stuff like that, but the problem was, it's like, you can't even get chests at the same time that you're getting chests in like a friend's world. You have to go back to your world and get that chest. You can't do quests together, like side quests together with your friends. I think the only thing that is kind of beneficial with co-op in that game, the only time you really need co-op in Genshin Impact is for like puzzles and stuff with 4 people and 3 or 4 people, and that's only if you don't have characters like Zhongli or Amber. Most times I actually feel like it's so much easier just to do content on my own rather than with people. And what Final Fantasy XIV does really well with multiplayer is that in most cases it's actually better to join a party, group up with other players or friends and do content together, because it's actually faster to level that way. You get rewarded with good loot and stuff if you do that, and they lock up all of like the better loot in the game for progression and stuff in instances where you need to play multiplayer. And I think that's really good for an online RPG, because you know, I feel like one of the biggest parts of online RPGs is working together with friends and the social aspects of it, right? So that's what I really like about it. I really like how in Final Fantasy XIV you can have the equivalent of like a guild in Final Fantasy XIV. It's called a free company. I love how you can have like your little free company groups, because again, it makes it easier to socialize with other people that you might be close to, and it really brings like a sense of community inside the games and stuff like that. And that's kind of what I wanted. I know a lot of people in my own streams and stuff like that have said, you know, I really wish there was like guilds or something like that in Genshin Impact. And yeah, as far as I can see, I'm pretty sure the only organized form of like community on these Genshin Impact games is just the random kind of like online system, online co-op system where people can enjoy your world, or you can join other people's world at random, and then your friends list. That's pretty much it, but people on your friends list can't interact with other people on your friends list, so that's what really sucks. And also, you might not want to join random people's worlds in Genshin Impact because you can get hacked and stuff like that. You know, they have a really flawed security system at in Genshin Impact where it's like if people have your UID, they can get like all this information on you and like hack your characters and stuff like that. I'm like, man, like if you know what, it's okay. I'll just play solo and stuff like that, or play with friends that I know, and like that's what really hurts the game. It's like even if I do want to play with like other random people, like I can't even do it 100% safely, and that's complete garbage, man. So domains in Final Fantasy XIV, like the dungeons and the trials and stuff like that, are just so much more interesting. Like I go through Genshin Impact in the domains and stuff like that, and you're expected to do these domains like hundreds of times to do artifact grinding. God forbid you gotta go grind the Crimson Witch domain. Whew! Same thing over and over again. It's one set of enemies, you kill them, you go through it, you get the reward, you start over again, you do it over and over again. Whereas it's like, even if I do the same dungeon in Final Fantasy XIV over and over again, it's less mind-numbing than doing those domains over and over again, because you know, you have more of a story going on in the dungeons, at least in Final Fantasy XIV. Like in the domains, you don't really have a story that you're going through. There's no real explanation for the domains. It's they're kind of just there, and then you do it, and then you get the reward, and like that's it. Trash mobs, boss. Trash mobs, boss. Trash mobs, boss. That's usually the layout for the dungeons or the raids in Final Fantasy XIV, and I like that because it gives more of a sense of journey when you're going through for these dungeons and stuff for these rewards. You're not just going through for the rewards and stuff like that, but it's like you could go through these dungeons just to enjoy the adventure together. Like sometimes, you know, like in Final Fantasy XIV, I'll go through dungeons just to go through them, even if I don't need like a certain reward from it, or it's like under leveled, I will go through these dungeons sometimes just because like I enjoy them. My next point is the community in Final Fantasy XIV is like, bro, it's beautiful, man. Like it's so beautiful. I've never met such wholesome and loving people in like an online game before. I'm so used to playing games like League of Legends, Valorant. People are yelling at you, calling you every word in the book and stuff like that the second you get in a lobby.
I had 2 bullets in
But with Final Fantasy XIV, like, it's so crazy. Like, people are so nice. I'm actually like, damn, like, are they actually this nice? Like this is... I just don't feel like there's a sense of a Genshin Impact community in the game. Like, it's hard to knit people together, so I feel like that's another reason. I just want to go over to Final Fantasy XIV because I want to make some meaningful and strong connections with some other players on the game. So that kind of wraps up my points for why I'm going to be transitioning from Genshin Impact over to Final Fantasy XIV. But man, I could definitely go on for a lot longer talking about why I prefer Final Fantasy XIV over Genshin Impact, but I feel like this video would just never end, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. So to recap everything, the reasons that I prefer Final Fantasy XIV over Genshin Impact is because I feel like there's way more of an abundance of content to go through with Final Fantasy XIV. I think the content, especially at endgame, is much more enjoyable and less mind-numbing than Genshin Impact is. I think that the co-op system in Final Fantasy XIV is just much better. And the other thing, last but not least, the community in Final Fantasy XIV is just beautiful. Like, I don't think there's any way that you guys aren't gonna love the people over at Final Fantasy XIV. This video wasn't to make you guys hate Genshin Impact or anything like that. Again, despite everything I said, I know it might be hard to believe, I still think Genshin Impact is a great game. I just don't think it's a 4 to 5, 10 hour time sink the way Final Fantasy XIV is. And I think the fact that it's a mobile game also kind of justifies its downfalls in these categories and stuff. If you guys were interested in getting into Final Fantasy XIV, it is on a free trial up until level 60. You can play through the base game and the first expansion for free. There are a couple little tiebacks, like I think there's a money limit at 300k. And if you guys are ever looking for a Final Fantasy XIV community to join, you guys can definitely go check me out over at twitch.tv/SwayKage. I'll have a link on the screen and I'll have it in the chat if you guys want to go check that out. But yeah, it's been enough from me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace, guys. I'm sweating, bro. Stop. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 yes. Do I do it? Do I skip it? Or do I go for that one, close one? Okay, probably close one. Yes! 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 Oh, man. Let's fucking go! Yo, look at my hands, bro. I don't know if you guys can see that, but my hands are sweaty. There's sweat on my mouse, bro. Oh.